Today we're going to continue our work in Adobe Illustrator and perspective, and today it's going to be about putting text into perspective. Again, I should mention I'm working on a Mac. Some things are going to look a little bit different, and I should mention that I'm not connected to my network drive, my drive H, and I'm not connected to the courses drive, drive L, but I'll show you everything you need to know to be able to do this assignment. Here's the idea. We're going to work on putting text onto some spaces on some buildings here, and I'll show you how this is all going to work here in just a minute. You're going to open up a file that will have the buildings on it, but you'll notice here that I have some text on that billboard and on the side of this building and here and here and here. And so what I would like for you to do is to put 5 text items on someplace. There's another good spot right there. You could put some text on right there. 5 text items, another good spot right in here, on the buildings, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And the text can say anything school appropriate. I've just kind of labeled things and put things on the buildings, and you can do something similar. You can label it however you want, like bank or CVS or the buckle or whatever you want the buildings to say. Alright, so here is how this is all going to work for you. If you click, if you're in Illustrator and you click File and Open, and you browse your way to, you'll have to get to the Courses drive, drive L, and you will need this file that is called, and I'm looking for it right here, it's called Perspective Text. Right here, and it'll be in the courses drive. There'll be a folder for it on drive L for your class period, perspective text, and you open that up, and I'm gonna fill the artboard there, and it'll look like this. It looks just like what I had a moment ago, but there's no text on the the billboards or the buildings or anything like that. So let's take a look at how all this happens. First of all, there's some tools that I recommend that you use here, and I'm going to show you how you can kind of get them set so that you're ready to use them anytime. I just have, there we go. Actually, it'll probably look like this. First of all, you'll want to turn your perspective grid on with Command Shift I. All right. And then over here on the toolbar, there will be, I think about halfway down or so, there will be just a little, it'll kind of look like this to begin with, and it'll be a little, it's just a set of 2 tools, the perspective grid tool and the perspective selection tool. Now what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to come over here to this little bar that's in the end of that. If you click and hold on that tool and then slide over to the little bar that's on the end of that, that tool panel that pops out, and just click that little bar with the little arrow, it tears those off. And I kind of like doing that because this perspective selection tool right here is going to be kind of critical for you today. All right. So you might want to do that. You might want to click here and then tear that off so that you have the perspective selection tool available for use. Now also remember, you have this widget up here that controls which plane or which grid you're working on, and that's going to be important too. All right, well, one of the things we haven't really talked about with this grid, or this this widget up here, is that you can pick the left grid, you can pick the right grid, you can pick the horizontal grid. It's the 3 surfaces of that cube. But if you click in this circle in the empty area around the cube, you'll see, and you can see a little pop-up there. It says no active grid. And for part of what we're going to do today, that's kind of what you're going to want. You're going to want no active grid at all. So if you click in this circular area around the cube, you'll get no active grid. That's how I'm going to start off. All right, now I want to put some text on one of these buildings. So I'm going to take the type tool here, and I'm just going to create some regular old text out here just on the side of the artboard. I'll just click once, and let's say that I'm going to use caps lock, and I'm going to make this say coffee shop. I pressed enter there, so it'll be on 2 separate lines. All right, now I can select that text, and I can do all the normal things across the top. We've kind of worked with text before. Across the top on the options bar over here, I've got lots of options. I can change it to whatever font I want, so you can do that. I'm going to make it Arial black. I'm going to center it. I would like to have it centered. You can change the color of it if you want to. Right now it's filled with black. I might fill it with white and give it an outline that is black. So you can do, whatever you want as far as that goes. That's a little thick right now, but I might tweak that later. All right, so I've got this text, and I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. All right, I've got this text that says coffee shop, and I want to lay it right here on what would be kind of the left face of this greenish building here. All right, well, so here's what you have to do. You have to think, okay, the left face of that green building is lined up on which grid? Well, okay, it's pretty easy to tell. If you look at it, it's lined up on the blue grid. So I'm going to come up here and click the blue grid on the widget here. Actually, I have to do it with the perspective selection tool. I got to do that first. Okay, so I take the perspective selection tool, and it looks like a cube with a little arrow right here. Perspective selection, click the blue grid. Now watch what happens. All I have to do is grab this text and drag it down, and it's going to slide right into perspective. All right, it just changes into the perspective that I need. Now I'm going to zoom up on that a little bit because I would like to kind of tweak the size of it. Again, using the perspective selection tool, I can grab these handles and I can stretch this box out a little bit and kind of lay that text out on there the way I want it to look. All right, so that doesn't look too bad. That looks pretty good. So that's one. All right, so now I'll zoom back out. I'm going to do a Control-0 here, and let's go to work on the others. Again, I'm going to take my perspective selection, say, okay, no active grid, please, and I'll just make some text that says restaurant. All right, and then I will just select that. And I'm using my regular black arrow there to just select that. Now, I'll just keep it black to make this go a little bit faster for right now. Okay. Now, I want to put this text that says restaurant on the right side, the right face of that building. So again, what I got to do is look at the grids. Which grid does it line up on? It's on the orange grid or the right grid. So I'll come up here with the perspective selection tool, click the right grid, grab the text and just drag it right into perspective there. Now it doesn't look great yet, but I can zoom in on it using Control+, and I'll just stretch that out using my perspective selection tool. Remember, I got to use that little perspective selection tool that has the cube and the arrow on it, and I can put that text on there. All right, I'll do a Control-0 to zoom back out, and I'm going to finish this very quickly now. I'm going to try to hurry. I'll just take the type tool, and again, originally I like to just create the text with no active grid. So I'm going to switch this to no active grid, take the type tool, and let's say that I want like the FBI headquarters. I'm just totally making this up. I'll make that a little bit bigger. You can do whatever you want with font and color, but I'm just trying to do this quickly so that you guys can get to work. All right, so here I have the FBI, and I'm going to take perspective selection tool. I think I'll put it on the top of this yellowish building on the side that's facing the sidewalk here. And so that would be on the orange grid, the right grid. So I'll do right grid, I'll drag that over, drop it in. And it isn't going to look great to begin with, but I can do Control+, and I can pull this over. Using the perspective selection tool, I can take that text and size around and tweak it however I want. Okay, Control-0 to zoom back out. Maybe I'll do one more. I want you to do 5. There's plenty of spaces here for you to fill up, to put text, but maybe one more is probably going to do it here. Make this billboard look like it's advertising Coca-Cola. All right, so I'll put the word Coke there, and I'm going to change the fill of that to red to make it more fit the brand. Now, if you look at the billboard up here, it's hanging up above the building. It's lined up with the blue grid or the left grid. So I take my perspective selection tool and pick left grid. All right, very good. And then I can just drag that text and stick it right on that billboard. And I'm going to have to zoom in some, move the artboard here, and I'm going to want to make that bigger so that looks a little bit better. Command-0 to hop back out, and I can deselect if I want to be able to see that a little bit better. All right, you're getting the idea. I want you to do 5 of them. There's other spaces where you can put text in there. But you're getting the idea, hopefully. You have to use this perspective selection tool when you're dragging your text into the perspective you want. And you also have to use this perspective selection tool when you are selecting which, left grid, right grid, or no active grid. You have to use it when you're doing that as well. Now I'm going to go back over here to this demo thing real quickly to show you one other little thing that just may come into play later. Over here on the side of this artboard, I have it's a window. I created a window, and it's a bunch of grouped objects. It's a rectangle with 4 blue rectangles, and I used the paintbrush and just put some strokes on there, and it kind of looks like a window. And what I want to show you here is that this idea that we're working with works not just with text, but it would work with things like windows or other elements of like a building if you want to do it that way. I'll turn on the grid here, Control-Shift-I, and I'll take the perspective selection, and let's say that I want to stick this window like on the coffee shop here. All right, well, if I pick the left grid and I just select this thing and I drag it right in there, you'll see that it takes on, and this isn't going to look great just because of the sizing and all that, but you get the idea. It takes on the perspective that I wanted it to. Move that coffee shop over a little bit there. All right, and if I zoom in on that, you can kind of see that window just fits right into perspective, just the way I wanted it to do. And so, again, all I'm showing you there is that this trick that I'm using, this perspective selection tool and dragging things into perspective, works not only with text, but it also works with drawing objects as well. All right, so your mission today is to work on putting 5 text items onto these buildings here, and when you get it done, you've got to save it on your network drive, file and save as, and save on your network drive. And then once you just keep this name, perspective text. Once it's saved on your network drive, you got to drag it and drop it into your turn in folder on drive L. So folks, that is the mission of the day. Have at it.